Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Film Snobbery Live. I am your host, the film snob Nick Baisley. I'm joined by Jerry Cavallero, my co-host for the evening, director of Stuck Like Chuck. Jerry, good evening.
Good evening to you too, Nick. Hi, everyone.
Hey, we are both very happy, privileged, and pleased to bring to you. We've got a great show for you guys tonight. I say that like every show. Tonight, I really mean it because. We have someone who is a legend in the independent film industry. While we get a lot of them, this one actually has a very special meaning to me. I remember back when I was in high school, I was working, one of my first jobs was working at a Blockbuster Video. And this was in the early 90s, back in grade school and high school, stuff like that, early to mid 90s. And I discovered this little gem while I was there called CLERKS. And as I got enraptured in that kind of world, in this independent filmmaking and that kind of cinematic experience, I was then introduced introduced to this guy who had kind of been a big help to independent film over the course of many, many years. We have that man on the show tonight. His name is Bob Hawk. He is an independent film consultant. He runs ICI, Independent Consultation for Independence, out in New York City. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm not even going to waste any time because I have so much to talk about with this guy who's one of the reasons why I got into film criticism, film consulting, and film, independent film in general. I want to welcome Mr. Bob Hawk. Hello, sir.
Hi.
Hey, Bob.
Hi. How you doing?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Sure, it's a pleasure.
So you have a history that in independent film that goes way back, and then before that, you actually had started out in theater. You had done some stuff out there. What made you make the transition from theater to independent film?
Okay, well, first I should say that the first half of my adult life was in the theater. I began as crew, a techie off Broadway, and I worked my way up to assistant stage manager, then was production stage manager. And I worked in theater for a number of years, and I got burnt out at some point, and I traveled with shows sometimes, and some of them ended up in San Francisco. And I began meeting all these independent filmmakers in San Francisco, more documentarians than narrative features, but it was a hotbed of independent filmmaking. And of course, everything is storytelling. And so documentaries can be as dramatic as any dramatic film. Anyway, I began to attend, or I was asked to attend, work in progress screenings, and I gave feedback, and I began to see films, particularly narrative films, that had almost insoluble problems. They were shot before their scripts were developed to the degree they should have been.
Okay.
And I was getting, as I said, burnt out on being a stage manager. You do 8 performances a week, and sometimes you do the same show for a year or more. And I saw a need with independent filmmakers to get more seasoned, informed feedback as far as storytelling. And I just began to realize that independent filmmakers do not have the luxury you have in theater of 4 to 6 weeks of rehearsal, then going into previews and testing it before audiences before you open. And I thought I could bring something to independent filmmakers with all that I learned about developing scripts through the rehearsal process and then fine-tuning in previews and then maintaining a show for 8 times a week for months and months of time.
Was it your time in San Francisco that also got you involved? Obviously, you're known for founding the San Francisco Film Arts Festival in 1985, which is a big mecca for independent filmmakers in California. Is that around the time as well that you got involved in the Academy Award-winning film The Times of Harvey Milk? Which, because I got to tell you, that is one of my favorite documentaries of the 20th century. I mean, it was, was it the 19th century at the time? 19th. I was getting confused.
Yes, it is a classic documentary, and actually, I got involved with the Times of Harvey Milk before the Film Arts Foundation, which was the nonprofit fiscal sponsor. I went to a work-in-progress screening in 1976 in San Francisco of another landmark documentary called Word Is Out, which was a look at, the first look really at gay people all over the U.S., all ages, all ethnicities, all genders. And it was made by a filmmaking collective led by Peter Adair, who began in cinema verite. And one of the collectives was Rob Epstein. He was 19 years old at the time. So I knew Rob when he was 19. And I got to know all the filmmakers, and I began to give feedback and encourage Word Is Out. And may I add that at the same time, I also saw Barbara Koppel's Harlan County, USA, which is another classic documentary. And I saw how films like that can change your life and really affect you. And I, as I said, was getting tired of stage managing. I needed a break, and I saved up enough money where I could take a year off. And I began to be invited to all these screenings of various films. And so when Harvey Milk was shot, I was one of the people who encouraged Rob to make The Times of Harvey Milk. Harvey Milk was shot in '78, and the documentary went into production in '83. And it took a lot of grassroots fundraising, plus WNET, the public television station in New York, to get the financing to go into production. And I told Rob, whenever I'm there, and I'll do anything. And I ended up being print media researcher and archivist, and I looked at many, many cuts over a year's time. And I learned a lot about the filmmaking process, and I was able to bring my knowledge of storytelling. So, as I said, Film Arts was the nonprofit fiscal sponsor, and so I began volunteering at Film Arts. I created a job for myself, and I conceived the Film Arts Festival, which I directed for the first 8 years, from '85 on. By that time, Harvey Milk was not only in the can, it had opened and it had won an Academy Award.
And you along with obviously Harvey Milk, you have so many other credits to your name, as far as, you know, even people that, you know, whether you're not directly credited or you only get like a special thanks or something like that. I mean, the types of people. I mean, obviously Kevin Smith is the most obvious, and even when we first met, you had said, "Oh, you might know me from my little friend Kevin Smith," and I was like, "Yes, but no, you're so, you know, I know you from so many other things too." And you worked with Ed Burns, the brothers McMullen, and you know,
right.
so many.
Well, let me say that I didn't work on Clerks. I championed Clerks. I actually saw it at the IFP market, and it was on the last Sunday morning when the market used to be a lot longer, and the industry attendees kind of thin out toward the end, and I ended up being the only real industry person who attended. I didn't know that virtually everyone else in that auditorium was a member of the cast or crew of Clerks. And they didn't know who I was, and all I had was a badge that said independent consultation for independence. So they didn't know that I was on the advisory selection committee for Sundance, and that I had lunch after every market with the people at MoMA who put on new directors, where it eventually is screened. And I also knew Peter Broderick, who I encouraged him to watch it in the videotape library. He told Amy Talbot, who was working on The Village Voice, and she ended up having it as the lead of her coverage of the market that year. And I told everyone at Sundance, and so I passed the word on. I also knew John Pearson, who ended up being the producer's rep.
Yep. Yeah. John Pearson, if the audience isn't familiar with, he wrote the book Spike Mike, Slackers and Dykes, in which he highlights a lot about Kevin Smith, Spike Lee, Kim Pierce, all these other independent people. So sorry to interject on you there, Bob. I just wanted to make sure the audience had a frame of reference.
And it was interesting. John Pearson was trying to get out of being a producer's rep anymore. He no longer wanted to do it. And Peter Broderick and I kept harassing him to watch Clerks. Finally, John's wife, Janet Pearson, who is now the director of the South by Southwest Film Festival, she watched it and she said, "John, you have to watch this." and the rest is history in a way.
Yeah.
But you know, some of the films I did not work on as a consultant. Of course, virtually every Kevin Smith film since then, I have usually read the first draft, like Chasing Amy. I saw the first draft come out of the printer, and I was an associate producer on that because I was living with Kevin and Scott Mosier and the DP, and Ben Affleck was on the sofa. It was a condo, and we were all there shooting Chasing Amy.
Which you had a cameo in, too.
Huh?
You have a brief cameo in that, too.
Oh, yes, I had a cameo. I'm the giggler. Because of SAG, I couldn't utter dialogue, but I got to get the giggles. And but to go back to some of the other filmmakers like Ed Burns and The Market, I saw a student short that he made, and I was impressed by it. And he was at that time working for Entertainment Tonight. You know, he was a driver and a gopher and whatever. And I encouraged him to keep making films. So he sent me a long cut of Brothers McMullen. And I really loved it because I knew that a lot of people could relate to that film and what it said. And so he was at the market, I think the year after Clerks. It was the next year, and I was in the videotape library, and Amy Taubin and Peter Broderick were at their video station, and I handed them a VHS. There were no DVDs yet. A VHS of Brothers McMullen. And so Amy ended up writing in the Village Voice about that. So, you know, it's a question of, I'm not just a consultant, I encourage people who I often see their early work, a short or whatever, and it's encouraging and nurturing talent. And of course, after the Times of Harvey Milk, Rob Epstein asked me to look at every film he made, and I had a great time being a researcher on the celluloid closet because I got into the vaults in the Academy's library in LA, where all the correspondence from the MPAA and the early days of the production code and even the Hayes office in the silent era, and all the and the whole history of gay images in film from the silent era to the present. And that was a lot of fun. But I've just enjoyed my association with filmmakers, whether I only work on one film or whether I'm with them for the long haul. Kevin has become a dear friend, and I'm so excited that he's going into production on Red State, which I just think is a giant leap.
I'm excited to see him kind of get out of his comfort zone with comedy and drama and kind of going into that more suspense thriller horror kind of thing, or at least that's the original concept I had heard for Red State. And also, I'm really looking forward to his adaptation of Hit Somebody.
Well, I'll tell you, Red State is going to blow people's minds because you think it's one kind of movie and you keep turning corners and there are surprises and upon surprises, and it's going to, I think it will usher in a whole new era of Kevin Smith.
I'm looking forward to that because I've enjoyed his career all the way from the beginning, and he has such that everyman kind of feeling that he's very inspirational for filmmakers, so that they really feel that like, oh, I can go make a movie too because he made a low budget type of thing. Just kind of staying along the vein of Clerks for a second. In Kevin, there are a lot of film festivals and stuff out there today, and both online and there's there's a bunch of different scenes right now for indie film. Do you think that Clerks could happen again today? Like at will we see another Clerks at Sundance? Will we ever see the success of something like that? Even is it going to move online? Where do you was that really just a frozen moment in time, and really it's kind of like some independent filmmakers need to let that go and kind of move on and find their own stuff now?
Well, I think films build on each other. It's impossible, unless we're some kind of all-encompassing psychic, can possibly tell what would happen to Clerks if it was made today, because Clerks, it did happen in its time, and it was one of the building blocks or one of the catalysts for other filmmakers to realize, oh, I can make a film cheaply and it can be a success. And there have been examples to follow that. And it's not always financial success, but like, if there was not Clerks, would there be the Duplass brothers?
Mm-hmm.
Would there be Mumblecore? Would there be, all kinds of films? I mean, and Clerks happened because Kevin had been inspired by people like Richard Linklater and Spike Lee, and in other words, he made Clerks partially because he thought it would be possible, because Slacker told lots of filmmakers that things are possible. And Clerks also made filmmakers believe. And I just had a script consultation with a young filmmaker on Sunday whose heroes are the Duplass brothers. He not only saw their first three shorts, Puffy Chair changed his life. And he said, Puffy Chair inspired me to think I would be able to make a film. and so they are his heroes. But would the Duplass brothers have happened if it was not for Kevin Smith? And would Kevin Smith have happened if it wasn't for
Linklater?
In other words, it's a continuum. And I must insert here, one of the things that I dealt with as a consultant after the success of Clerks was that I got so many bad scripts or saw bad films that had already been shot and were in edit that were trying to be Clerks. And they were set in warehouses, pizza parlors, all kinds of places. But a lot of them were very bad. They were trying to imitate Clerks, but they didn't realize that the reason that Clerks was a success was that Kevin can really write outrageously wonderful dialogue. And not everyone can write great dialogue, but it was low budget. They got the money, but those movies never went anywhere. Right. And also, he had the luxury, because it was a non-SAG film, he cast it locally. Mm-hmm. And he was able to rehearse, like you do in the theater. He ran those lines because, as we all know, Clerks is very dialogue heavy, and there are scenes that go on much longer than is normal in most films of just people talking. Mm-hmm. But it's a very deadpan, low-key delivery mm-hmm. of that dialogue that contributes to the success. But the problem with a lot of the imitation movies that have horrible acting, he took the actors in that and he ran the lines over and over, and he knocked the acting out of them. He said, do less, do less, do less. And that's how, one of the reasons it succeeded. Because an awful lot of beginning filmmakers who are working with non-professional actors don't know how to dampen down people who overact, and it's painful to watch.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I get a lot of movies here too that are not necessarily stuff that I would be like, oh, yeah, I wouldn't submit this to Sundance if I were you. If anything, I would hide this. But no, when you, what is your process when you're looking to consult with filmmakers? I mean, I know you're a very one-on-one, conversational type of person. You like to, if they're local, meet with them, or get them on the phone and really kind of one-on-one it. But
Mm-hmm.
do you have a process, that you go through?
And actually, since I can't read and talk at the same time, but I did catch one question in the chat room about how does one get a film in front of me, and I guess we should mention the website, filmhawk.com.
Yes.
And that's FILMHAWK.com.
Yep.
And on that, it's a very simple utilitarian website which tells what I do, what I don't do, and it gives an idea of the films I've worked on, an overview, and then there's a bio, and it has a phone number to call, and it has my email on it. So it's very easy to put a film in front of me. And I'm charging recession rates right now because we're all in the same boat, and I feel it's very important that I not be too expensive. And I've always been reasonable, but I've actually rolled back my rates. But I like to talk with a filmmaker directly to see where they're at. Now, there are some people who are at the script stage, and with a dramatic film, that's where I like to catch it, because you can't solve some problems in the editing room. Mm. And so things like plausibility, logic, character development, and the dialogue. But also, I'm a copy editor and a proofreader, and have been a copy editor and a proofreader for pay in real life. And it's so important not only that the script be developed where it's ready to shoot, and that's the most important thing, but if you're going to send out a script to try to attract investment from people who do not know you, who are not your friends or family, and if you want to attach talent, it's very important that your script be as clean and as correct as possible, because people don't enjoy reading scripts even though they do it for a living, but they any excuse, anything that hangs them up, anything that stops them, can be fatal. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's very easy if you get a script that's in bad shape. to just lay it down and never pick it up again. And so you want to provide a smooth, easy ride without a lot of things to stop the reader. And of course, the most important thing is that there's good dialogue. It's a good plot. I often address certain things of logic and plausibility that people who are too close to the script don't see. And they're very thankful because they're able to correct that, you know.
Mm-hmm. Now, do you, when you're working with a filmmaker, I mean, do you run into a lot of, as you're consulting with them, do you run into a lot of people who, like, they'll hand you a script and you're like, look, this just really isn't any good? And how do you broach that? Is it more of coaching to help develop characters, to develop plot or scenes?
Well, there are also, I should say, some films come to me after they've been shot, and I also consult on cuts of film, and I give notes. And sometimes people who ask me to work on their script also ask me to look at cuts of the film. And some people come to me with completed films, and they want me to strategize festivals with them, which I do. So there are some filmmakers who I do all three steps, and some that I do the last two steps, and I do sometimes deal with absolutely finished films, and I just strategize film festivals, which brings me to the question you just asked, mm-hmm. which is, yes, I get scripts that are helpless, hopeless, clueless. I also sometimes am sent cuts of films that are also, they are never going to see the light of a projector. And I am honest, but I'm not cruel. There are degrees. I do not falsely encourage filmmakers, but if a script shows that it has potential, but it needs a lot of work, I'll be very frank and say, this needs a lot of work. And if you're willing to go along with me, and I'm not God, just whatever I say that's helpful to you, that you can hear, accept, and if I say something that you don't agree with and aren't going to agree with, fine, but I think there's a potential here. But whether it's a script or particularly when it's a cut of a film or a finished film, I sometimes have to say to a person, I don't think this is working, and I think you should really put it on the shelf. I will tell you why I think this, and you can agree with me or not. If you want to learn from this, mm-hmm. here's why I think you should put it on the shelf rather than continuing to throw money at something which is pretty much unsalvageable. It's not easy to say that, and I don't enjoy saying that, but I would not be able to hold up my head if I was not honest. And I learned early on, well, I learned in the theater, in professional theater, working with some very famous people, and then when I got involved in independent film, I was asked to work with some seasoned filmmakers, and they all said the same thing: be brutally honest. don't hold anything back because they know that that's the only way. And there are some people who it's very obvious they probably will never, ever succeed. Some people fall in love with the idea of being an independent filmmaker.
Right.
But they just don't have that particular knack or knowledge. And so you don't want to encourage them because but some people will go on. But I know a lot of films that I've seen that I knew were hopeless, and you never hear from them again, and they never make another film. But as I said, I never. Well, I tried to never be cruel, although I know it hurts, I know it stings, and people don't have to agree with me. They can go on and try to make it happen. I'm not going to mention the name, but there's one filmmaker who I knew early on who has gone on to make many films, but this filmmaker's first feature, which was sent to me, was a disaster. And it had a leading actress who was hopeless. And I spent an hour and a half telling this filmmaker why it should be put on the shelf. And that filmmaker has been eternally thankful because I knew, and I'm not even giving the sex of the filmmaker, I knew that this filmmaker had talent. And so I encouraged the filmmaker to try again, but I was detailed. See, I encouraged this one because I knew the talent
Right.
was there, but I did not hold back as to why this film should be put on the shelf, and I spent an hour and a half listing all the flaws. Some people I don't put through that because I don't think there is talent there, and I return 4/5 of my fee. I keep 1/5 of my fee for just the time spent, but I do not give a consult, and I say, I'm sorry, but I cannot help you.
Sure. Well, and you know, you see and you work with a lot of different filmmakers, and I mean, obviously, just your bio proves that you've worked with so many people, and you know, you've seen the industry change over the years. What is your opinion right now are some of the most common mistakes that filmmakers are making today with their independent films?
I would say, and this is eternally true, people try, when there are problem films, often they are trying to imitate other successes. As I said, after Clerks, there were a lot of imitation Clerks, you know.
Oh yeah.
Attempt to do Clerks again. And so I think that is a very, and to be positive about it, what would correct that? And I think it is one of the biggest problems. there are too many films that are like other films, is to find your own voice. Also, some people attempt genre films, which are hard to do, particularly if it's satire, farce, film noir, whatever. They're trying to imitate genres that require a great deal of craft and experience. And I encourage people to find their own voice that comes out of their own life, things they know. Anyone who makes the first feature film and they're trying to do a genre film, and it doesn't reflect something that is out of their own life experience. They're more than likely doomed. In other words, the first feature, and any short even, there should be some passion, some personal passion. I have to make this film, I have to make this film. As a matter of fact, sometimes I say, and it's a little bit of a joke, but the only films that should be made are films that have to be made. That the filmmaker can no longer exist or breed, or breathe, I mean, not breed, breed. And unless they get it out of themselves. I see too many films that are lazy. They're not really serious about it, and it's like I said, some people are more in love with the idea of being a filmmaker than making films.
And do you think that there's also, I mean, do you run into a lot of filmmakers who have like a fundamental lack of knowledge about the business of filmmaking? I mean, everyone wants to go out there and they want to make this art piece, and I'm all for art every day of the week, but do you find that there are a lot of filmmakers who are like, okay, they'll give you a movie or a script or something and be like, all right, so what the hell do I do with this? I mean, they don't know how to, they've made something or they want to make something, but they have no idea how to sell it.
Oh, well, of course, that's a very complex area. I could, there could be an all-day conference on that alone. But certainly, a filmmaker doesn't always have the objectivity to know how to market their own film.
Right.
But they should, particularly when they're beginning to enter film festival, is being able to articulate what they think it is and to position it. But they should also get help, whether from a consultant like me or a publicist or whatever, or just intelligent people in their life, whether it's a teacher, as someone who they happen to know who is in the business, or it's just a question of being able to write a good synopsis that, in a way, tells the gatekeepers what this is. But you can't do it alone, particularly in promoting a film. If you're lucky enough to get into film festivals is to be able to be articulate about it at Q&As and be able to communicate to the people that you need, like publicists or sales reps and anyone else. And even if you get a distribution deal, you should make sure that any distributor who offers an acquisition deal,
Mm-hmm.
do they get it? And it's a two-way thing. Some people acquire films and they don't have a clue as to how to promote it. And those films, like, go belly up in a couple of weeks and they're gone because there's no intelligence in positioning the film and in communicating in the publicity. But filmmakers have to, and not only be able to articulate their film themselves, they also have to know when someone who expresses interest actually gets it. And it's not always the one who offers the most money. It's who you want to get into bed with for a year of, sending a film out into the world.
And I'm sure with signing with most of these distributors too, where a lot of the deals are, you're handing your movie rights away for a very long time. I mean, the average is between 15 and 30 years, like a mortgage. You got to make sure that it's like giving away your daughter at a wedding. Like, you want to make sure you're giving her away to the right guy or girl, who knows. We're in Massachusetts here, so it can go either way. It's really interesting because there's so many facets to what's going on right now. I mean, there's still a fairly little bit of traditional route that filmmakers can go. There's the online world now. Do you find it difficult? Because you kind of came from I don't want to call it the old school, but you've seen independent film evolve over time, and now there's this whole new.
Well, yes. I am of the old school, but I am well aware of the huge changes. Just hardly how many independent filmmakers shoot in film anymore?
Right.
For instance, and the options that someone has as to how they make their films available are huge, and it's changing every day. It's just becoming more and more. There will be more and more options, and I think that there are many films that don't make out all that well. Like they may not get into a lot of film festivals, and they may not get a distribution deal, but now, if you have a film and a website, and with search engines, the people who would enjoy your films can find you so much easier. And some people self-distribute, and there's no middle person. And there are films that are very specialized, and they have a niche audience, a target audience, but that audience can find them so much easier. And and there are some wonderful films that I'm aware of that are having a hell of a time getting into film festivals. And in the old days, they would have been a slam dunk, but there's more competition.
Yeah, I mean, even
there
Kevin.
Are more
even Kevin Smith says, you know, he said it in Official Rejection, the documentary Official Rejection, directed by Paul Osborne, who we also interviewed a while back. He was talking about, Kevin was saying, Clerks would never have gotten into Sundance today. And do you feel that that's a true statement?
No, I wouldn't say that because, and you know, this year was the first year that John Cooper and Trevor Groff, who I've known ever since they began at Sundance. John Cooper began in '88, I think, and I was there from '87 on, and then Trevor came in the '90s, and he began his film traffic. Well, they created a section called Next, and there have always been films like that, really low, no-budget films, and they are the equivalent of Clerks. But they created a section, and they gave it a position, a profile, those films in that section. And I don't agree that Clerks couldn't get into Sundance today because it was of its time, but the equivalent, as I say, you know, there are always equivalents of Clerks. But Clerks was shot in cruddy black and white 16 millimeter.
Yes.
And you had to get beyond that. And I liked the look of it, but I really loved the look of it when it was blown up to 35 by Miramax, because it had a grain, a texture. It just visually was so, it was very, you know, Cassavetes in a way, but only when it was blown up to 35. But now we have things that are shot by, you know, the red camera and all those wonderful new cameras we have, and they're still very low budget, but they look great, and we have the projectors to make them look great also. The festivals are doing a wonderful job in making films look really good.
Do you think now that it's less, since everyone, because of the low budget aspect of making film, like there's a low cost of entry to making independent film now, do you find that it's now more, or rather it's less about creating a dynamic visual story and more about having, you know, dynamic characters and more about having a story that is engaging to the audience?
That is always true. I love films that are visually sophisticated and exciting, but if you don't have the story and the characters, it's empty. And there are huge, monumental films made by independent filmmakers that I've admired their earlier films, and I've admired their films when they go back to reality, but sometimes they are given the opportunity of a huge budget, and it's empty and it's bloated, and they have too much money. And so visuals alone don't hold up in the long run. You have to have a good story, you have to have good characters, and you have to believe that these characters can exist, even if an alternative world is created. I do enjoy magical realism where there isn't always the plausibility and logic factors of more gritty reality.
Right.
But usually those films are made after a filmmaker has paid their dues. You have to learn how to tell a story, and usually it's wise to make a modest film with not a lot of locations, with a smaller cast. Don't make your first film so complicated. Learn how to tell a story simply and directly, and hopefully it will have something that is from the filmmaker's individuality and heart, and that's what carries the film. But it's always nice to see a film, and I've seen some films that are first features, and they're rather simple, but they also have the fortunate circumstance of having a DP who really has an eye, and maybe the director has an eye too, but that director is fortunate enough to have a DP who is able to make something look really good. So, you can have a visually very stunning film, a first film that is relatively simple in story and character, but hopefully there's some kind of originality which represents the sensibilities and the voice of the filmmaker.
Now, do you have a not to put you on the spot, are there any movies that you've seen recently that you think that the audience should be on the lookout for, and say, like, look, if you have an opportunity to see this at a film festival, or you have an opportunity to see this at a screening series or something like that that's curated somewhere, do you have anything that you... before you answer the question, I want to say I'm really excited. The Provincetown Film Festival is coming up, and I'm really excited to see Malcolm Ingram's Bear Nation is going to be there. Also looking forward to actually seeing Clerks and Dogma on the big screen. They're going to be showing there because Kevin Smith is actually getting an award at the Provincetown Film Festival. And no word yet if he's attending or not, which is kind of meh, but I would love to. Either way, I'm looking forward to that because it's right here in Massachusetts with us. And so that's cool. But yeah, Bob, anything out there that we should be kind of keeping an eye out that you've seen recently, either in your journeys or stuff that people have brought to you?
I have seen some films that I really love, but my brain right now can't. I would have to switch gears. I would have to dig out, because I watch so much. I would have to dig out catalogs, mostly festival programs, in order to remind me of what is coming up from the unknown. From the unknown. I have seen some films, but I can't think of one right now, and it's just because my head is in a different place right now. But I would like to encourage everyone to check out. It opens this Friday, and I talked about the Duplass brothers.
Yes.
Right? And Sundance is opening on Friday, and here is a miraculous case where two guys who have worked with minuscule budgets and no names attached, they got, I think, 7 or 8 million from Fox Searchlight, and they got Jonah Hill and Marisa Tomei and John C. Reilly. And that film has the integrity of their mode of operation, how they've always worked. I think they had artistic control, but it's obvious that they were able to maintain their sensibility and were able to make a film which I think is not only hilarious, but also has a darker subtext, which is very interesting. But it's obvious that they didn't become whores because they had a lot of money thrown at them, and they had Fox Searchlight, and they had names. And it's a delight also to see actors like Marisa Tomei and John C. Reilly, who have, I'm sure, done many films where they did not have the freedom to be creative collaborators like they obviously are in this film, where they're really having fun, and you see them in a way you've never seen them before, because I'm sure that the Duplass brothers created an improvisational climate.
Yeah, no, and for the audience out there, if you want to learn a little bit more about Cyrus and some of the other stuff that they've been working on, there's actually a really good article or interview with them in this, I think it's month. I don't know if it's a bi-monthly or whatever, but it's a publication, HD Video Pro. There's actually, they talk a lot about their relationship with their cinematographer and how, and also, oddly enough, they talk a lot about color correction. So it's just the tone of where the article went, but they talk a little bit about Cyrus and how they work. The Duplass brothers are very lucky where, you know, I think they can still make the movies they want to make because they are relatively low budget, and they also, I mean, they know that based upon prior successes with stuff like Hump Day and The Puppy Chair and stuff like that, that they're in Baghead, yeah, I think they did Baghead as well. They're able to, they're able to, you know, they're able to get someone like Fox Searchlight to give them some money. They already have the kind of the distribution plan out with them, and then but you know, then they can kind of not worry because it's not a lot of money to go make the movie that they want to. So yeah, it's interesting. Do you when you look at a script, does your mind ever immediately go to budget? Like, just be like, you look at this and you're like, this is going to cost an arm and a leg, and you're not going to be able to make it.
Yes, I'm glad you mentioned that. Every once in a while, I get a script and I read it, and one of my main notes is that, do you realize what this is going to cost? and often, well, there are several different things that are usually more costly. Doing period film. Mm-hmm. It usually costs more because you have to be very concerned about locations and everything looking like it's from that period, and costumes and everything. And it can look really cheesy if you don't have the budget. Also, some people write films that have so many locations and so many exteriors and requiring a lot of permits. Now, there is guerrilla filmmaking, and like I just saw a short at a festival that was shot guerrilla on the subways of New York, and it's one of the best examples of how to get your shot without getting the permits and not getting arrested. But it is very. Some films are too elaborate and complicated. Not that I wanted to discourage people, but as I said, when you're beginning, keep it simple. And the other thing is that people write scripts where it involves a lot of music and film footage. You know, I just read a script where they had people watching 4 or 5 classic films, and I know how much it costs to get clearances for those films. You know, it's an arm and a leg, and it can escalate your budget. Just music clearances.
Oh yeah.
One has to be realistic.
Well, I mean, look. I mean, I know we keep going back to Clerks, but we'll use Clerks as the example. I mean, they had a temp track or a track that they were using for festivals and stuff like that, and then when Miramax grabbed it, they were like, "Yeah, we're gonna have to get rid of this. Yeah, we're gonna have to get rid of this. We're gonna have to give you another $1 million just for another soundtrack." And but that soundtrack is classic.
Yeah. The problem is when the film clip or the music is integral to the plot.
Yeah.
And you just say, well, good luck, but it's going to blow your budget.
Yeah, it's funny. You know, you even talked about, you know, as far as budgets. I saw a movie at the Staten Island Film Festival about a week ago, and it had some name. I'm not going to name the movie because I don't want to call out the filmmaker, but it was a horrible movie. You could tell they had too much money. They had a really kicking soundtrack with a lot of well-known songs, so you know they paid for that. It had a lot of well-known people in it, including a star from The Office, another star from Batman and Robin. It was Jenna Fisher, Chris O'Donnell, and a bunch of other cameos of people you've definitely seen. And I gotta tell you, and it looked great, but the story was absolute garbage, and you could tell that it was a case of a movie that had too high of a budget. Like I think they had so much money they didn't know what to do with it, so they were just like, we're going to spend it on everything.
Well, it always goes back to story.
It does.
Always. And that's why I'm doing what I do. I mean, my business has evolved as far as consulting on scripts or cuts of film or just the strategizing festivals. Mm-hmm. But as I said, I like to begin at the script stage if I can. Mm-hmm. You can't do it with a documentary because documentaries are written in the editing room, and you can have hundreds of hours of footage, and you could cut 5 equally valid variations of a documentary, you know. But when you're working from a script and you have actors, get the script to as fully developed as you can before you shoot.
And I want to remind everyone again, Bob Hawk, he's the Independent Consultation for Independence. You can find him over at www.filmhawk.com. His email address, his phone number, everything's on there. He's one of the most accessible guys in the industry right now, and according to him, working for the cheap. So you can't go wrong with that. Bob, you know, you've given us a lot of time, and I really I completely appreciate you taking the time out. You've you know, you do so much and have done so much for the independent film community. It was a distinct honor to meet you at the conversation this year when I did meet you, and for you to agree to come on the show was just something that I do greatly appreciate. You know, and not just because you know Kevin Smith, even though he is you know, really big in the independent film scene and has been for, you know, a number of years. But, you know, your career goes back to, you know, like, you know, we talked about the times of Harvey Milk, and you worked, you know, on Full Grown Men, and you worked on, just so much stuff, Urbania. Anyways, so we could go on and on about your filmography, but, you know, what you do...
By the way, when people go to my film site, there's a lot of titles of films I've worked on, and you can click on each title, and it will either take you directly to the IMDb site or to their website.
Yep, and I'm going to, just real quick, I know we had at least one question from the audience earlier on, and I know we kind of didn't get a chance to get to it, and I just want to kind of look for it real quick just to see if we could quickly get an answer. I remember it was something that a friend of ours, King is a Fink, put out. They are a pair, actually a pair of ladies from from Illinois who make movies, and they're regulars here, and we like them. So I would love to be able to get their question answered if I could find it.
I haven't been able, because I've been talking so much, I haven't been able to read the questions. So
that's okay.
I have not been able to enter into the chat room because I can't do two things at once.
Oh no, no, that's fine. I'll wait for them to hopefully repost it. Until then.
Do you know their question or?
Well, no, I was just looking for it in the chat because it was way back during the beginning of the show, and I couldn't remember what it was.
They just resent it.
Okay, I see it. Yeah, she said, is there anything an independent filmmaker can do right now to really get noticed? You know, what can they do?
Well, I mean, make a good film. I mean, what are you going to do? Get up on visit a film festival where you don't have a film and climb up on a table and take off your clothes? I mean,
oh, they would do it. I know them. They would do it.
I mean, I'm going to be serious, but I had to just say that. But it is, you have to have the film in order to get noticed. And I assume the question is about getting your film noticed. Is that you have to put a lot of thought into the synopsis you write, the materials you create before professional publicity people come on, which, you know, a festival will publicize your film, but they expect from you a good press kit. But it's more like getting noticed. You have to have the film, then a press kit if it has a very arresting image or your synopsis really grabs somebody. I mean, the CLERKS synopsis in the ISP market catalog, I read the catalog very carefully before I plan my week. It was the CLERKS synopsis. They had that shitty still, and you know, they were from Highlands, New Jersey. It could have been crap. But I was intrigued by the concept, the idea of using a convenience store as a setting and kind of like a metaphor for our values, our society today. I did not really know if it was a comedy even, but I was grabbed by the idea. Remember, it was of its time, and the whole idea of a convenience store, which they are convenient, but they're not much more, because you pay a higher price for often inferior goods, right?
Yes.
But they are convenient, and so if you're desperate, you go into a convenience store. But it's a lot better to have a good supermarket, you know. But anyway, I love the idea. I said I would love to see a film that is focused on a life in a convenience store. That's what grabbed me.
And,
the still was not impressive, and as I said to myself, this could be a piece of shit. Because it's obviously,
it's black and white, it's grainy,
local film, but you can't predict what's going to grab. But what you want to do is work very hard on your synopsis that it truly communicates something that's not only accurate, but that will grab people. Something distinctive. Sometimes I'm intrigued by an image on a postcard. A postcard, sometimes if it just happens to hit me right, and a postcard is often a reduced version of the poster, but whatever. But there are no easy answers. Each film is its own truth,
Mm-hmm.
And so when they ask, how do you get noticed? Try to grab people. But I also should say that, rejection. As I said, there are some very worthy films that are having a hard time getting into festivals today where they would have been a slam dunk. It's very hard to predict, but you have to be able to deal with rejection and not get discouraged and keep plugging along. And if it's not taking, change your act. Rewrite your press kit. Try to come up with a more grabby image or something that communicates the film.
Mm-hmm.
But we must always remember that no matter how successful a film is, if it's gone the festival route, it's got its own file of rejections. I know independent films that have won Academy Awards, that have won a file of rejection letters. I mean, every year I'm shocked at some of the films which go on to success, and they're rejected in some of the first important film festivals that they enter, and I can't believe it. But if all filmmakers realize that the gatekeepers are human beings who are subjective, and they're not perfect, and they often are blind to certain things, and their judgment is flawed.
Mm-hmm.
But you can't. But if you have a film that's worth it, particularly today, people will find it, even if it does not make out well at film festivals. There are also films that are late bloomers.
Yeah, I mean, I know I was talking with someone who used to work for Lionsgate a long time ago. Well, not a long time ago, but he used to be in he used to sell territories for films, and one of the things that he and I got to talking about was the life cycle of films, and I agree with you in that last statement where you said that some of them are late bloomers. I think that the life cycle of an independent film, especially one that's like a very low budget indie film, is a completely separate topic than a blockbuster film. Like, blockbuster film is in and out of the theaters within a month, maybe 2 months. The DVD's out in like 4 to 6, and then it has a short lifetime there, and then it goes in the bargain bin after a year. So whereas it seems like an independent film can almost revitalize itself.
Oh yeah, and it could be on cable forever, all around the world. And I know of a documentary that had minimal success, but the checks have been coming in for 10 years, and they're not large checks. But this particular film that I'm thinking of, it took 10 years, but they sold all Scandinavian territories 10 years after it first appeared at Sundance. It was a documentary, and I don't think it ever had a theatrical, but it showed on television, and it made out very well in the educational market. And as far as foreign sales, it sold to some countries initially, but 10 years, and all of a sudden, it sold to the Scandinavian countries.
We,
You know, and the life of a film can go on, and I've been associated with a number of films that people still are able to watch at 2 or 3 in the morning, and the actors in those films still are getting checks 5, 10 years after the film was made.
So we do have another quick question from the audience. The person's not horribly identified. It's FilmSnobbery-21420. But they address you as Mr. Hawk. Do you see film as primarily entertainment? And is there a way to attract similar attention when that is not necessarily the point? So that's the question.
Well, it all depends on how you define entertainment. I am entertained by some films that are wrenching, gut-wrenching, draining, dark films. I also enjoy laughing my ass off at, The Hangover. I mean, entertainment is in the sensibilities of the beholder. Anything that affects me emotionally, whether it's just laughing a lot, or whether it's crying, or being haunted for weeks by something that is so dark and so, there are certain violent films that I find exhilarating. And sometimes the Coen brothers, for instance, will combine violence with humor. And I'm just using them as one example. There are others. I think the question was, does the film have to be entertaining? And I'm saying, no, not in the most surface conventional sense of being, jolly and making you feel good, and everything. But to me, if a film can affect me on any level, and there are some films that have changed my life. At the time I viewed them, it's the individual viewer and how it affects them. And if they have a personal experience, wow, that's great. And they're thankful for it. I see things that are very serious and are very disturbing, but I'm exhilarated because, for one thing, it's exhilarated at the creativity, just seeing a creative artist's work, But as I said, I can enjoy Judd Apatow film. And by the way, you said, would Clerks succeed today? Judd Apatow is did Clerks, among other films, historically enabled Judd Apatow.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
Right. But what's entertaining to me is anything that affects me on a visceral level, where I either bust a gut laughing, or I'm haunted for days or weeks by a film. You know, I think Polanski's The Pianist really, I couldn't shake that film. And it was Adrian Brody also, his performance. And I remember Adrian Brody in countless low, no-budget independent films that hardly anybody's ever heard of.
Right.
And to see Polanski, another Holocaust film, right?
Mm-hmm.
With an actor who I've seen grow from a very young man to a performance like that, that to me is entertainment on a very high level of, I had an experience which I'll never forget. And just to give a few examples, through my life, East of Eden,
Mm-hmm.
seeing James Dean, directed by Kazan, in East of Eden, I was 17 years old. I sat through that twice, and I told my parents, if you want to understand me, you have to come see East of Eden with me. And they never forgot it, you know. And when I was entering my early 30s, I saw Five Easy Pieces with Jack Nicholson, directed by Bob Rafelson. That affected me deeply because I was at a certain place. But I also love to have fun. I love Singing in the Rain, you know,
Mm-hmm.
a fun musical. And I like gross out films with, you know, obnoxious, very gaudy humor.
You sound like you would be a fan of the
With-
Trauma catalog.
With dick jokes and you know, all that kind of stuff. I mean, I enjoy anything that succeeds in affecting me. And some people only like certain kinds of films, but you know, I enjoy all kinds of films. All it has to do is work on whatever level it's at.
Yeah.
And I don't ask as much of some first films as I would ask of the Coen brothers
I got you.
or Darren Aronofsky.
You know, we mentioned, you know, like guys like Aronofsky and Polanski and the Coens and all that, and Smith, very much Smith included, in this. You know, putting the movies aside for a second, it seems like all of these directors have, you know, they've built very distinctive identities for themselves. I mean, these are the, you know, the auteurs of this particular generation or that generation back in the, you know, the 80s, 90s and all that. You know, and they're obviously continuing to work today. The question is that do you find it's important for independent filmmakers to also create that dynamic identity that people will remember? Like, people remember the Coens for their visual style and their storytelling and the way, particularly the way they edit, which, I mean, they got their editing start on Evil Dead, I mean, with Sam Raimi. So you have, you know, stuff like that. And you know, we remember Smith for his wordsmith type, you know, the way he tells a story and
Yeah.
stuff like that. Do you find it's filmmakers need to develop that as well, like this identity that is kind of like their public visage?
Right. There is a certain identity, and like it's very interesting that often my favorite films of some of those filmmakers are my favorite films. Like Blood Simple, which is the Coen brothers' first film. I don't think they've ever topped that. They've had larger budgets that have been visually more impressive, and I have a special place in my heart for Fargo. And you know, they've made an extraordinary array of films, but you know, I think Blood Simple is still my favorite Coen Brothers film, and I'm sorry, but my favorite Spike Lee film is not Do the Right Thing.
She's Gotta Have It?
Still, She's Gotta Have It.
Yeah.
I mean, I realize how much these filmmakers have achieved. And they do have some kind of an image, although Spike Lee, his films are all over the place. The Coen brothers have made all different kinds of films, but he is really, you know, and Spike Lee is more hit or miss than I think the Coen brothers. But I really take to the first films. Now with Aronofsky, for instance, Pi, which I personally appreciated, but felt it would have been better at an hour, but 60-minute features do not fly.
Mm-hmm.
But I admired it tremendously. But if you told me that it would acquire distribution at the time that I saw it at Sundance, I would have said, "Oh, this film."
Pi was really interesting.
But actually, his films, I think, his first film was not my favorite, and I liked Requiem for a Dream a lot. But actually, The Wrestler is probably my favorite film, and he made that after he made what I thought was a big bloated bore, The Fountain.
Oh yeah.
And I don't mind saying that because I admire Aronofsky a lot. But that's what happens sometimes when you're given unlimited funds, so to speak.
Yeah, no, I agree with your assessment of The Fountain 100%. I remember it distinctly, my experience with that, because I was on a date at the time, and at the end of the movie, my date and I both looked at each other and we said, "What the hell did we just watch?"
Yeah, and I think that could have been the reason why The Wrestler was so good, because he had to redeem himself after The Fountain, and there was a lot of care and passion in The Wrestler. You know, so anyway, well, we could go on and on talking about movies, but I hope I've communicated the fact that there are no generalities that can be made. How to get noticed, what is entertainment, you know. I mean, independence to me means authorship and having your own voice. And on the other hand, what you choose to watch is also a question of choice. What turns you on as a viewer? That to be an independent viewer and to seek out the new, the unusual, the original, and not feeling that you have to go out the first weekend to see Robin Hood. Yawn, yawn, yawn. And there is such a thing as independent film going. And it's individual taste, and everybody has the right to love whatever film they want to love. If it floats your boat, you have the right to love whatever you love.
Well,
but as far as success, and I think I should close with this thought, and it's a question I often ask. when I'm on a panel, I also give lectures sometimes, is how do you measure success? How do you measure success?
Because I don't think it's all measured in box office.
No.
No.
Oh, no, obviously. Success to me is making a film that you can be proud of, but also success is no matter how few or how many people see it. If you're lucky enough to be there with an audience and you go up afterwards, or people come up to you or they write you and it affected them, if it was just plain entertaining, quote unquote,
Mm-hmm.
or whether it affected people. To me, satisfying yourself and being truly proud of what you make, but also the joy of having other people who do not know you from Adam,
Yep.
letting you know that your film meant something to them, or to sit in an audience and hear laughter or that particular kind of silence where people are hardly breathing, where you have grabbed the audience by the collar, and that kind of silence where people are compelled by the film and where you could hear a pin drop. That is, to me, what success is all about.
Yeah, I agree, and thank you for sharing everything that you shared with us tonight, Bob. I want to thank you for coming on the show, and you know, I know we're keeping you up. I really I do greatly appreciate it.
Oh, that's all right. I'm a night owl, but I do have things to do.
Excellent. No, but on that note, yeah, I want to. I also want to personally thank you for you know, again, part of your work has inspired me to do what I do, and to have you on the show to me is a real kind of a full circle thing for me, you know, and you know, it means a lot, and I want to thank you again, and hopefully we keep in touch, and we'll help maybe continue the conversation another time.
Okay, it has been a pleasure, and I would love to come back again, and I'll try to be more prepared with examples of films to watch out for that you may not have heard about. I think a lot of people are aware of Cyrus, but I actually would have to go through what I've seen, because I see so much. What I've seen in the last 6 months or so is to make a list.
Well, anytime you want to share a list, I'll be happy to disseminate it for you. No pressure though. Thank you very much. I know we kind of hit you with the curveball on that, and we know you see so much, so no big deal. But you've been great. Thank you very much for answering all the questions, both that I've given you and the audience. And if there's anything we can ever do for you, or anything like that, when we see you, or anything we can ever help you promote, we're here for you.
Okay, just to toot my own horn, I am accessible, and if I'm some iconic person in the independent film world, I'll work with anybody gladly.
Awesome. And that's
so
why we love you.
I'm not off in some, you know, other world. I'm on the ground with everybody else.
Well, thanks, Bob, for that, and you have an excellent night, and we will
Okay, you too.
we'll talk to you. Have a good one.
Okay.
Good night, Bob.
Take care.
Thank you.
So that was Bob Hawk, everyone. Independent film legend. I don't care what anyone says. That man, untouchable. No. Bob Hawk, independent consultation for independence. You can go check him out at www.filmhawk.com. The man is not on Twitter or Facebook, but let's be honest, does he really need to be? No, we come to him. So that was really good. You know, the show has gone almost 2 hours, so I'm not going to I think we're just going to leave the discussion for anything else. We'll leave it till next week. Want to remind everyone that we are going to be taking July off. And from the show, we'll be back in August. We've got some great guests lined up in August. We have the director of Children of Invention. We also have actor Kevin Sorbo. Yeah, that's right. We got other gods on this show. We have Hercules himself. So it's going to be really good stuff we've got coming up. I'm really excited to be sharing some new stuff with you. We have I actually have a couple things I'm developing for the site, and the site's actually going to undergo some changes as well. We've done some experimentation over the course of the past few months, and kind of see what people have been responding to and not responding to, and we are actually going to be changing for the better and taking a more active role in helping out independent filmmakers. So I'm really excited the direction we're going to be going. Come August, show will be back. We got some great stuff. We're going to be filming a web series here as well for our director Ryan Nishan. I'm really looking forward to helping him work on that. We also have a possible project that we might be working on in New York City. So if you're a director in New York and you're a fan of poker, get in contact with me because we've got something we're working on. So we'd love to have you guys involved. Jerry, anything else you want to share before we get the heck out of here tonight?
I just wanted to say that it was great getting to listen to Bob Hawke. Didn't really get too much talking, but that's okay. Great listening to him. And also, everyone listen to Film Courage on Sunday. I'll be their guest for the hour. So it's 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, LA Talk Radio. I have to promote my own stuff, Nick. You know that.
Of course.
So
yes, yeah. And Jerry on Film Courage. You guys got to check that out. Go ahead, Jerry.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that plug, Nick.
Yes.
Yeah, I'll be talking indie film and stuff like Chuck 2, of course, because I don't have anything else to talk about. Right, Nick?
That's absolutely right, Jerry.
But you can't stop me because you won't be on there. So
no, Jerry, I won't.
You go uncut.
Uncut, just like you. Moving on. So, you folks, I want to thank everyone again for coming out. Again, check out Jerry at Film Courage on June 20th. At noon Pacific Standard Time. He'll be live with David Brandon and Karen Worden, and I would say look out for the archive of this episode in the next 24 hours because I want to get this information out to you guys as soon as possible. I want to thank everyone for joining us tonight. Join us next week. I believe we have Adam Chatnick from Distributor that is going to be on the show, so check him out as well. And everyone, good night.
Good night. Bye. Stuff like Chuck.
I hate you, Jerry. I hate your fucking face so much.